Hey folks, this is Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook, and I want to welcome you back to the Ditch That Textbook Digital Summit, where we are all about technology and pedagogy and all of these great topics that you can start using in your classroom immediately. And I am excited about this interview because it seems like whenever I publish articles on my blog, the ones that are about Google are the ones that always seem to totally take off. People really seem to love those concrete things that you can start using in your class tomorrow. And one of my favorite sources for that is from the Control Alt Achieve blog and the blogger that creates it, which is Eric Curts. And we've got Eric here today, and he has got some very practical, very usable things that you can start using in your classroom right away. And so, Eric, let me toss it over to you. Thank you so much for being with us. And can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Matt. And right back at you. Absolutely. I'm always inspired by everything you share on your blog. Thank you so much for having me here. If folks are not familiar with me, my name's Eric Curts. I'm a technology integration guy up in Northeast Ohio. This is actually my 26th year in education. Started off as a middle school math teacher many years ago. Taught middle school math for 7 years before moving into a tech integration role at my district, where I did that for about another 14 years. And then the last 5 years, I've been at the regional level. So I work sort of like at the county office. I support about 30 school districts up here in Northeast Ohio with technology integration, mostly Google related things. We're all Google districts up here. In addition to that, I'm a Google trainer and a Google innovator, and get the chance to travel around Ohio and around the country working with schools and conferences and lots of folks on how to use G Suite for education. And yes, I do blog. My blog is controlaltachieve.com, and I try to put 1 or 2 blog posts up there a week, as well as my monthly webinars and other resources like that, trying to give folks just really practical things that they can turn right around and use with their students. So that's me. And again, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. That's sort of a shared goal that I think both of us have, is that, I remember, or especially early on in my career, when I could find those things that I could just take and put right into the class, it saved me time, it gave me inspiration, and it was great. And I have to say, I love the title of your blog. Hearkening back to the old Control Alt Delete that we all used to have a love-hate relationship with, and so I think it's a great fit. So let's go ahead and dig into this a little bit. Now, Google is something that I remember when my school district adopted Google, when we became a Google district, and all those students had their accounts and everything, because I was kind of, surreptitiously sneaking my Google activities in with my own personal Gmail account way before. I think a lot of us have that experience probably, but I remember when we finally adopted it, it was huge because it started to make all of these digital collaborative activities possible that we couldn't do before. And so, Eric, I just wanted to hear your take on all of that, on how you've seen the power and the potential of Google in your own class or in other people's classes.
Well, absolutely. And it has grown so much. When I was at the district level, we were one of the first school districts in Ohio to roll out, which was Google Apps for Education at that time, now G Suite. There was a couple others who had blazed the trail, but we were one of the early districts to do so. And at that time, one of the big reasons was because we were broke. We didn't have any money. And we were like, I need to give our teachers tools that they can use. But the thing is, whether you are, a district that is blessed and you've got plenty of funds or not, the point is Google has provided such an amazing suite of tools to schools that allow them to really tie into those 4 C's we talk about a lot, those 21st century skills: communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking. They're not just, it's not just a word processor. It's not just a presentation tool. It's not just a spreadsheet. If you just think that's all it is and you stop there, you're missing on the fact that it's a way to collaborate. It's a way for kids to work with each other, whether it's in the same classroom, across the hall, or across the globe. It's a way for kids to be creative, for them to make things rather than just being in the class and taking notes and spitting that back. They can create their own content in all of these wonderful tools, and they can think critically, and they can communicate. That's the beauty of it, is that it's a set of tools that are, not an ends in themselves, but a means to an ends. They are the tools that allow our students to truly engage in their education and prepare them for the future that they're going to have.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hear every once in a while, I'll hear teachers talk about how, they're such an innovative teacher because they use Google or because they use technology. And it's like technology and Google and all of that stuff doesn't make you innovative any more than saying, I'm an innovative teacher because I use the chalkboard, or I'm an innovative teacher because I use the photocopier. It's all in how it's being used. And I know I came up with some ideas that worked for myself, but a lot of times the inspiration for the best ideas has come from other educators. And I'm sure that you would agree with that you've seen some pretty amazing things with other people. And so let's go ahead and dig into some of that stuff. So maybe somebody watching this will get that same kind of inspiration. And so I think the first tool that we were going to touch on is slides, which makes me so excited because slides is probably my favorite of all of the G Suite tools to use in the classroom because it's so versatile. So, and actually, for anybody that's watching here, I'm going to be learning what Eric's going to be sharing with us right along with you. I kind of have a rough idea of what he's going to talk about, but I'm going to be kind of like taking this all in right alongside you. So, Eric, what have you got for us related to slides?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And this is probably the last time you'll see me until the end. I'll probably just leave this on screen share. Probably be a little bit easier to manage that way. So we're going to go ahead and share my screen here. And when it comes to what we're going to be taking a look at today, figured, let's start with Google Slides. That is definitely a great resource. And if people want to get to these resources I'm going to be talking about, they can definitely go to the blog at controlaltachieve.com. And probably the easiest thing if you want to get to just like the slides information is if you just throw slides on the end. So controlaltachieve.com/slides. That'll get you to my slides specific page when you're there. And a lot of the things that we're talking about are probably going to show up on that particular page. Having said that, the very first one I'm going to share actually isn't. So I'm going to break my rule right away and I want to talk about something that I have not done a blog post on yet. I'm sure I will eventually. Many other people have talked about this particular topic. But what it comes down to is using Google Slides not for a presentation. And I think that's one of the important things I'm going to be talking about here today is using tools in a way that maybe they were not originally, intended for. We like to turn things on their head and do something different with them. And so for this, I'm trying to come up with the best term for it. And so I think the word I'm going to use to describe it is using Google Slides collaboratively. I think it's a word. I think we're going to go with that, collaboratively. And I'm going to actually drag over another screen here with an example of what I'm talking about here. And here's the idea. Sometimes when we are, having students, write or create or solve a problem, we understandably would love for them to get feedback from their classmates. And so let's say, you're an English teacher and you want them to respond to a journal prompt, or you are a science teacher and you want them in this case to explain photosynthesis, or you're a math teacher and you want them to explain how they solved a problem. That's fantastic. But a lot of times our first thought is, well, I probably should fire up Google Docs, which, hey, that's great. Absolutely love Google Docs, but I'm going to fire up Google Docs and have them write their journal entry. And then, how can we get them to provide feedback for each other? Well, they can, share that document with other students, and then students can leave comments. That's all great. That's fantastic and wonderful. But it can pose a little bit of a pain point there, because what you've got now is, 25, 30 kids in a classroom trying to share 25, 30 documents with each other and leaving feedback and so forth. And so one thing that I would suggest teachers try is Think about using Google Slides for an activity like that. And here's the idea. What you can do is you can create a Google slideshow, and you don't have to create the whole thing. Just the first slide is totally fine. That's enough. And on that first slide, you can have the journal prompt, or you can have the question of the day, or you can have the problem, or whatever it is you're going to work on. And basically, you share this to your students with edit rights. You can push this out through Google Classroom. Now, keep in mind, if you're doing this through Classroom, you're actually going to want to choose the option that says allow the students to edit it. Normally, we say make a copy for each student. That is not what we would be doing here. We would have every single student inside the slideshow at the same time. And basically, that's it. Once the kids get into the slideshow, your instruction to them is simply to click on File, or not file, sorry, click on the little plus below file, click on the little down arrow next to the plus below file, and create a new slide. And so they would come in here and they would create a slide, probably the title and body slide. That would probably make sense. And so each student is basically making their own slide, and on that slide, they're doing that writing, or they're showing how they solved a problem. Hey, they can even use, awesome tools like, like Alice's webcam record, tool, where they can record a video of themselves and they can stick that right in, or they can use Screencastify and they can record themselves and throw that in. Here's the point. Every student's going to have their own slide. And those students are going to be able to come through this slide, and they're going to be able to put in their information on that slide. Now, after they're done doing their writing or explaining the problem, now all they have to do is go visit other slides for the students, and they can now read what the other students have done, and they can leave feedback for those students. And so as I click down through here, I can find what each of my classmates have done, and then all they have to do is click Insert and Comment, and that will allow them to then type a comment on that slide. What a fantastic way for the kids to be able to leave feedback for each other without ever leaving the slideshow. They can all be in there together working. And so this is a great way for kids to work, as we're saying, collaboratively. So they're all got their own slide, but they can now jump around and see each other's. And if the teacher wants to go through and pull each of those up on the screen and talk about the different ways people solve the problem, that's fantastic. But even if they don't, the students can now provide feedback for each other. So that's one first thing I would suggest with slides is don't use it as a presentation all the time. Use it as a way for kids to create and provide feedback for each other.
I love this. I love this. So then honestly, this is probably one of my absolute favorite uses of Google Slides. And, this is one that I've come back to as much as once or twice a week in the classroom, just because you have that easy collaborative space. And the thing that I love about it is that when each kid has their own slide, we're all working together on something bigger. Like we're creating something together as a group, but then we also have our ownership of our own space. It's like that slide is our own personal real estate. Like that's my space, that's my slide, but we're all still working together. And then you've got easy access to everybody else's stuff. And I mean, I love all that you can do with this. You can put images onto it. You can move images around and order them. You've got the photos and the video like you had on your example, and the commenting and everything. This is one that I absolutely love. And I've seen, even if you do professional development, this is great when you work with teachers too.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, it's so much better than sit and get professional development, because it means the teachers can get in and can create something on those slides and then see what everybody else has done and gather ideas that way. So then you, as the professional development provider, don't have to be the sole source of ideas. You can tap into that creative genius of the room. So I'm so glad that you brought this one up.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we leave slides, just a couple other quick ones that we'll mention on slides here. So another one to talk about is using Google Slides for manipulatives. And this one definitely gets a lot of excitement whenever we share this with teachers. So an example that I'll just use quickly, because it is winter time, at least for while we're doing this, so people might, tie into that well, was a blog post I did last year on building a snowman with Google Slides. And so I'm going to go ahead and fire this up real quick. And the idea behind this is, again, using a slideshow, but not as a presentation. You're using the slideshow as a way for kids to be creative and to write, and to work. And I'll just show you the quick example here. So in this case, we're doing build a snowman with Google Slides. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my little template here and open this up, give that a second to generate. And while it's generating, I'll talk about what this is all about. So the idea is you're going to basically get a slide with a blank snowman on there. And then on the other slides in the slide deck, you're going to have objects. So in this case, it's eyes and mouths and arms and feet and hats and hair and all kinds of stuff like that. And then what the students are going to do is they're going to copy and paste from those slides to build their snowman. Let's see if it's generated yet. It does take a little while for this one to pop up, and here it is. And so here's our blank snowman. And again, I can come here and say, oh, I like these eyes here. So I come in and I copy these eyes, and then I come over here and then I paste the eyes in. And so what happens is, first of all, for the little ones, they're definitely learning some tech skills. And so that's great, first of all. But then they're being creative. They don't have to stay with just the objects I've given them. They can always use, the insert menu and go in and pull in their own images. That is totally fine as well. But when it's all said and done, then they come over here and they write about their snowman. And so they build their snowman and they write a story about, what is your snowman doing, or tell the backstory of your snowman, whatever it might be. And when it's all said and done, then they can simply go File and come down to Download As, and there's the option to download an individual slide from a slide deck. So you don't have to have the entire slideshow when it's all said and done. You're just going to download a PNG or a JPEG image of that slide, and now each student has created their own. Now, I've seen this in so many different ways. I did a similar one for Halloween with building a jack-o'-lantern, and then some other teachers got inspired, and they made some turkey ones. Somebody made a disguise a turkey one, so you could protect the turkey from Thanksgiving dinner. I've seen so many of these. The idea being that, again, Google Slides doesn't have to be a presentation. It can be something where the students are actually manipulating and moving things around, and whether it be something like this or whether it be graphic organizers or things like that.
Yeah, this is so great. When it comes to this, one thing that you put in here that I'm so glad that you did, not even like all of the little bits and pieces that make up the snowman, but that text box next to it. And that's something that could be, easily overlooked, but that's the kind of thing I think that takes an activity like this and it kicks it up to higher levels of thinking. And it's such a simple thing to do, is to give kids an opportunity to talk about what they created. I know sometimes I've got a sort of similar activity that I suggest teachers do. Like if there's a picture of a historical event that you're talking about in class, or an artist's creation from literature you're reading or something like that, you put that onto the slide. But then you give students like a text box. I always put mine down at the bottom, and it gives them a place to talk about their thinking. So for me, I know sometimes I'll pull a picture of Washington crossing the Delaware, and then I'll pull out these little speech bubbles. If you go to insert shapes, and then in the call outs and the shapes, you have speech bubbles and thought bubbles. And so actually it's a thought bubble I have that goes over Washington's head. And I say, based on what you've learned about this event, what do you think Washington's thinking at this point? And then they take and they put the thought bubble over some of his crew. And it's like, okay, what do you think that guy's thinking? And is it similar or different? And then you give them that little text box at the bottom that says, justify what you just wrote. And you can even give them a little sentence stem at the beginning that says, and I'm going to check yours real quick. Yours says, write about your snowman. But yours could even have said, if you wanted it to, and it doesn't matter, my snowman has... I like my snowman because, and for me, I can say Washington was probably thinking this because, and then that kind of gets them going. And that's a really easy way to take one of these activities and to kick the level of thinking and the depth of knowledge up. So this is a really great activity.
Absolutely. Well, the final thing that I will mention on slides before we say goodbye to slides is if you are going to do a traditional presentation, and that's fine. Google Slides still is, in the end, it's a multimedia slideshow program. If you are going to do that, this is a blog post that actually just came out today, and that is on using the Pear Deck add-on for Google Slides. This is day one of my 12 days of Techmas, and I'm talking about using the Pear Deck add-on for Google Slides, which, if you're not familiar with it, I would definitely encourage you to check this out. Basically, the idea is you can take any existing slideshow that you have and you can add interactive elements to it. And so it can be things like a warm-up slide where kids can talk about what they already know about the topic, a reflection slide, a temperature check slide, do you understand this, an exit ticket slide, or you can add your own. For example, they include things like just a regular text question where the kids can respond, a number question where they can put a number in, multiple choice that they can answer, and so on. Now, when you put all this together, let me show you what this ends up looking like here. Let me grab an example. Here we go. I'll drag this on over. So here's one I did just for math. So for example, I threw in questions like, hey, I'm teaching about perpendicular lines, and now I want the students to be able to give an example of where would you see perpendicular lines in the real world? Or I'm teaching about angles, and I want them to say, if you had an acute angle, what would be a possible measure for that angle? Or here's an angle, what type of angle is that? Or let's talk about shapes. Draw an example of a quadrilateral, or let's talk about numbers. Drag this dot to show where a counting number would be. Now, what happens is when you run this, basically, what it does is the students will be able to use a code, and they will be able to pull up your presentation on their device. And as you work through it, basically what it does is it gives them the opportunity to be interactive. So here's a bunch of responses about perpendicular lines, and here's a bunch of responses where people showed what a possible degree measure of an acute angle could be, and here's where they did the multiple choice question, and here's where they drew their different quadrilaterals, and here's where they said what the counting numbers are. And the point is, instead of me just being up there giving an instruction with a slideshow, the one I've been using for years and years and years and years, suddenly becomes interactive. Now your students are engaged and they're providing feedback. So this is one you can just go ahead and dust off the old slideshow, throw in the Pear Deck add-on, and suddenly you now have engaged students in your classroom.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm kind of late to the whole Pear Deck thing. Whenever it became a new add-on to Google Slides, I sort of really started to dig into it and realize it. And now I'm pretty much on the Pear Deck wagon at this point. I need to find a place on my laptop to put this, I think.
Right.
But actually, right before we started this recording, I was just setting up a presentation where I'm going to use some slides to engage some teachers in a discussion about homework that I'm going to be doing tomorrow. So that's funny that you mentioned that. And Eric just mentioned that he's doing his 12 days of Techmas. And I realized that if today is, and you can kind of tell by looking at his screen that today is December 4th. So we'll let the cat out of the bag here that we recorded this a couple weeks before you're actually seeing it. But the beauty of that is that his 12 days of Techmas will be almost up. I was just doing the math on that, and it's going to either be pretty close to totally done or totally done. So if you want to check this out, if you go over to controlaltachieve.com, you'll be able to see all 12 days. So, of course, now that since this is only December 4th, Eric, now you have to keep up with your 12 days, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you can head over there and you'll find each of those blog posts as they come out, or there is one master blog post where if you go in, you can click the link here to open up a Google drawing that I've generated in preview mode here so that people can come in and give a click on it. And as each day comes, the presents will change from grayed out to colored in, and they'll become clickable. So at that point, you can click on each of the days, and that will then jump you out to that individual blog post that goes along with it. So absolutely excited for people to take advantage of that.
Wow, that's cool. All right, as soon as this recording gets done, I'm gonna have to go share that like far and wide. That's such a cool thing. So, all right, so slides. We've given you a handful of good ideas with slides. It's a favorite tool of both of ours, I think. And so the next one we're going to talk about is one that I'm really interested to see what Eric has in store for us on, and that is sheets. And Excel has obviously been around for a long time, and spreadsheets and being able to do calculations and all of that. But sheets is kind of like bigger and more powerful and cooler even than that. And I know that the illustrious Alice Keeler, her saying is the answer is always a spreadsheet. And I'm not always totally in agreement with her, but I'm starting to come around. And I'm interested to see what you've got for us. So Eric, take it away and show us something cool that we can do with sheets.
Yeah, when it comes to Google Sheets, again, if you want to get to all these resources for this one, just go to controlaltachieve.com/sheets, and that'll dump you right into the Sheets resource page. And there's a lot more here than we're actually going to talk about in our time together. So if you get excited about any of these things, I would definitely encourage you to go down through and click on some of these additional links that are in here. But my ideas as far as what I want to chat about with Sheets today is, again, kind of turning it on its head. So when we think about Google Sheets, we think, oh, it's for math people. It's for crunching numbers. And absolutely it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think you should be doing that. I think students should be collecting real world data. They should be putting it into a Google Sheet. They should be creating charts and graphs and looking for patterns and making predictions. Absolutely. We should be doing that. Now, that is a more traditional use of Google Sheets, and I completely am behind that. What I want to talk about, though, is that it can be used in other ways than that. And so for the example that I'm going to pull up here, I'm going to talk about using Google Sheets for what I call learning databases. Now, I don't know, maybe there's a better term. I need to come up with one at some point that maybe sounds a little bit more exciting than learning databases. But once you get into it, hopefully you'll get excited. And if somebody comes up with a better term, please let me know. But I'm calling it have students build learning databases with Google Sheets. And here's the idea: a Google Sheet, in the end, it's really just a grid where you can put information. And that information can be any kind of information. It doesn't have to be numbers. You don't even have to have a single number in the entire spreadsheet. So for an example, recently, a lot of people have been, taken by the book Wonder. It's been out for a few years. I read it to my boys, and they loved it. Now, my middle school son just had it as a required reading, and we just went to the movie theater to see it a couple of weeks ago, the movie version of it. So let's take something like the book Wonder and let's say while the students are reading through a novel, what if they were to collect all the information they could about the different characters while they were reading the book, and were to do that in a Google Sheet? Yep, absolutely. So let me go ahead and pull up an example and show you what this might look like. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about doing this for a novel, but think about all the different subject areas out there. This could be a database of elements on the periodic table, or explorers, or animals, or whatever it is. It could be careers that students are looking into. It could be maybe for a personal finance class. It could be a car they want to buy. It could be all sorts of things. In this case, what I did was I used Wonder, and so I've got all the different characters of the book. And as the students read down through the story, they start filling this out with, in this case, what is the age of the characters? What's their gender? Are they a family member to Augie, the main character? Are they nice or mean to Augie? And that's kind of the whole point of the story, is how people treat him throughout the story. Do they change throughout the story? Now, obviously, this would be different depending upon the book you're reading, but the point is, what the students are doing is they're using a spreadsheet to build a learning database. Now, this could be each student doing it individually. This could be the students collaboratively working on this. If they were doing animals of Ohio, each student could have an animal that they're studying, and they're putting in a row for their animal or their explorer or their element or whatever it might be. Now, first of all, just building it, that's helpful. It's nice to have all this data in one place. Where this gets more exciting then is, once it's built, is asking those questions, saying, okay, guys, so what can we learn from this? If this was an animal database, we could sort it by the life expectancy, and then we could say, what do you notice about the animals that tend to live the longest? What do you notice about the animals that don't? What are the common characteristics of a mammal? Let's, start, looking at this sort of stuff. Now, in this case, instead of sorting, I could use filtering, for example. I could say, are there any characters in the book who are both nice and mean to the main character throughout the story. Well, if I come in here to data and I turn on filtering, I can now filter this data down to answer questions like that. I can say, okay, let's go to the nice column and let's just get the yeses. And then let's go to the mean column and let's just get the yeses. And now we're looking at characters who were both nice and mean throughout the course of the story. And that can bring up questions like, okay, so what can we learn from that? Or let's say we come in and we say, are there any adults that are mean to Augie? So I could say, let's turn the mean into the yeses, and let's turn the age into adult. And turns out, yes, there is one adult, Mrs. Albans. And how does that affect her son and how he treats Augie throughout the story? And so the point is, whatever data you're studying in your course, no matter what it is, a spreadsheet can be a great way to collect all that together in one place. And then after it's there, dig into it. Ask those deeper questions as you analyze the data. And the bigger the data gets, the more interesting this can become, especially if it's, like I said, a collaborative sheet, whether it, like I've got other examples in here about, an animal database or a career database or things like that. So first thing that I would share when it comes to sheets is it isn't just for math. You can use something like this really in any subject area.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. This makes me think of how easy it is whenever you've got lots of data to get kind of like lost in the trees and you can't see the whole forest, and when you're able to see it, when you're able to put all that data into one place and step back and see the big picture, then all of a sudden you start to see things in a whole different light. And it's a great way to organize things for kids. I think I love this idea. This is great. Eric, can you show us one more time where you found the filtering, just in case we happen to miss that?
Absolutely. So in a Google Sheet, underneath the Data tab, you're going to have a couple of options there. Filtering is there, and so is sorting. So the two things I was talking about, like sorting animals by life expectancy, you can click on the column, and then once you've clicked on the column, you can sort the sheet by that column. And then filtering is in that same drop-down menu under Data. If you choose Filter, it turns on basically these little drop-downs at the top. So as long as you've got a header row across the top, those become the drop-downs, and now you can come in, click on that drop down, and you can check or uncheck the different characteristics that you want to show or hide. And basically what filtering does is it takes a large set of data and it restricts it down to show you just the data that matches your criteria. The bigger the data, the more impressive this is, but it's a really great way to dig deeper into the information and start looking for those patterns.
Excellent. I love that. That's so great.
Yeah.
I could even see, I know we're kind of departing from sheets when I say this, but kind of not, is I could even see to some extent using a Google form to fill this out too, or
Oh, absolutely.
just sort of depending on your use case, I guess, where if you built a Google form, if you go to forms and you ask a bunch of questions that have different drop downs, then that way kids wouldn't have to type in the answers. And then that way they would just put in like the name of the character at the top, or you could even pick the name of the character from a drop down menu and then have all of those potential answers as other drop down menus. And so they go through and they answer. They get to the end and there's that notes section where they can type in the notes and then they submit it. And then all of a sudden, then they go on and they do it again for another character.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a really good point. And you could, kind of scaffold this depending upon the age of your students, their experience level, and also how defined the activity is. You may know ahead of time these are going to be the questions. In a case like that, a form may be a fantastic way to get that data in. Other times, maybe it's a little bit more nebulous. We're not sure. We're going to build it. We're going to build the airplane while we're flying. We're going to say, okay, we don't actually know. All we know is the characters' names, and we don't even know all the characters yet, but we're not even sure what we're going to ask about them. As we read the story, we're going to go, you know what? This is another good column we should add in because we didn't even know this was going to happen in the story. And so it could even be something that brings up those great discussions in the class as we're going, saying, so what should we be collecting? Because a sheet on Romeo and Juliet's not going to look the same as a sheet on Wonder,
Right.
as those columns are created.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Love it. But besides that with Sheets, I'm just going to say one more tool for Sheets, one more example for that. Now, there's a bunch of other fun ones in here. I would definitely encourage you to check out some other ones. We've got like using Sheets for pixel art, and we've got Sheets for creating random writing prompt generators and random emoji writing prompt generators, playing Battleship, all kinds of fun stuff.
Can I just say really quick that with the emoji writing prompt, I showed that to my kids one day, and that was like all that we did for the rest of that afternoon. I mean, they're continuously writing, creating new emojis, and then we would think of like stories that we could make based out of those and everything. If you're watching this and you haven't checked that out, then controlaltachieve.com/sheets and go find that emoji story generator. I don't think I called that exactly right, but yeah, that's a really cool one.
That's it. So the thing I was going to show, though, for the next one is talking about add-ons. We did, the Pear Deck add-on for slides. When it comes to Sheets, one I love to show is Flippity. Now, this is not a new tool. A lot of people might be familiar with it, but I'm always surprised we didn't eventually run across some folks who maybe have not seen Flippity before. So real quick, just going to go ahead and explain this. If you're in Google Sheets and you go to add-ons, you can install all kinds of add-ons, and there's phenomenal add-ons out there, Autocrat and all these different ones. Well, Flippity is an add-on that basically allows you to create interactive games. So you can do flashcards, you can do a memory game, you can do a Jeopardy quiz show, a random name picker, a word search. You can do things like crossword puzzles, bingo games. Now, the thing that I want to emphasize about this is this absolutely could be something that you as a teacher use, but it can also be something your students use, okay? We're talking about students being involved in this process. So yeah, I could use this to make a Jeopardy game. And if so, basically you come in here and you say, oh, I want to use this Jeopardy game template. You go ahead and click on the word use, and what it does is it copies that into your sheet and it creates a template for you, which you can now then go in and you can add your own categories and you can add your own, clues and answers. But so can your students. What a wonderful way for them to make flashcards or bingo cards or a crossword puzzle or a word search. Let them choose one of the units throughout the year, and that's their job, is to make the class review game for that. They're going to have to really think through a lot of stuff to come up with good questions and good answers. And then when it's all said and done, basically you just need to go in and say you want to publish it to the web, and as long as it's published, then you're good to go. At that point, you can go back to your add-ons, go back to Flippity, and it'll give you the link you need. You click on that link and boom, your game is ready to be played. So it's fun for teachers, absolutely. But everything we're looking at here is things that your students can also be using to create content for the class.
That's great. I haven't seen Flippity for a long time. I'm glad you brought that back up. That's really cool. So
yeah, okay. Absolutely. All right.
So we've talked about slides, we've talked about sheets. Now I think we're going to try to get into another one of my favorites. This is one that I use on a very, very regular basis, and that's Google Drawings. So Eric, what have you got for us on that?
Absolutely. So Google Drawings, again, controlaltachieve.com/drawings will get you to that page. And again, there's way more here than we're going to take a look at. But again, the idea is you think about drawings, if you do think about it, which people should. But again, I find folks that, it's kind of hidden away. You don't always see it there in your Google Drive menu. You may think, well, Google Drawings is a drawing tool. It's something to draw with. Well, okay, sure. And I do. I mean, I use drawings for pretty much any time you see me do anything on my blog here. All of these little images, these are all done in Google Drawings. So yes, I use Google Drawings for drawing. I absolutely do. But instead, what I want to talk about is using Google Drawings, again, for interactives, something where the students are actually being interactive. And one of the, favorite options for this is graphic organizers. And so this applies to any subject matter. Doesn't matter what it is you're teaching, you can use graphic organizers to either help students prepare to learn, to help them process their thoughts, to help them get ready to write, to compare and contrast, lots of different things. So I do have a blog post on here called 30 Free Google Drawings Graphic Organizers. And if you follow that link, it'll take you out to the blog where you're going to find a couple of things. First of all, I've got a Google Doc that explains how to make graphic organizers with Google Drawings. And then I've got one of my webinars. I try to do about one webinar a month. So over the last couple of years, I got about 30 webinars or so. They're an hour long each. They're all freely available. You can find them in the blog there. You can also go to the webinars tab to get to them. Those are all just sitting there for folks. And if you want to, if you're done binge watching Stranger Things 2, you can binge watch my 30 hours of Google instruction there. Yes. But the point is, Google Drawings allows you to put in boxes and arrows and images and create graphic organizers. So, here's a word study diagram or a census chart or a Frayer model. The idea being that if I come in and give a click on any one of these, it'll make a copy here for us. Anybody who wants to use the demos I put together, please feel free to. I know, Matt, you've got many that you have created as well. I know many other people have as well. The point is, use these if you want, or just learn from them and realize all we're doing is putting boxes in on a sheet. It's pretty much just insert and shape, and then you've got all these different shapes. And so what we're doing is we're basically dropping in shapes on a Google drawing and maybe adding some arrows to connect things, throwing in a little bit of text. And in this case, it's a compare and contrast. And so an activity that I would do with something like this is a full class activity. I may come in and say, hey, let's compare and contrast, two items. And once I have set up item 1 and item 2, I can now push this out through Google Classroom. And again, I could say, rather than make a copy for each student, I could say all the students can edit this. And then I can pull this up in class and we can all work together and brainstorm on what makes item 1 different, what makes item 2 different, what is the similarity between these two characters of a story, or, whatever the case might be, and so, or again, we could make a copy for each student and they could be working on this on their own. Or again, students can be building their own. Absolutely, we can do it, but they can also just take a blank Google drawing and they can build an about me concept web, for example. Now, for anybody that's not familiar with Google Drawings, my best suggestion to you to kind of wrap this around, or wrap your brain around it, is think of Google Drawings as Google Slides if you only got one slide. It's basically a single slide of Google Slides. You've got all the normal tools. You can insert text boxes and images and word art and lines and shapes. There are times though where you don't need a full slideshow. All you need is a single canvas to work on. And so that would be definitely one of my suggestions. If you're going to dive into Google Drawings, that's a quick way to get some good mileage out of it, is using it for graphic organizers.
Yes, I love that. I think that's great. I've seen the popularity of this myself. I published a blog post, gosh, it was like a couple of years ago or something. I remember it was on a snow day and I'm creating all these little graphic organizers and I'm thinking, I wonder if anybody will actually use these. And that's probably one of the most popular Google related posts that I've ever written. So I totally know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And as far as drawings go, I like how you said you can think of it as a single slide from a slide presentation. The other comparison I make is that Google Drawings is almost like a digital poster board.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
Like the poster projects that kids have done forever, your drawing is like that one poster board, and then you've got all these things that you can put onto it. So good stuff. Now we've probably got time for one more cool thing for you to show us, Eric. So
absolutely.
Of all of the stuff that you've got, what do you got for us to wrap us up?
Well, as we say goodbye to drawings, I think the last thing I'm going to talk about real quick is just try to encourage people to consider Google mapping tools. So if you go to controlaltachieve.com/maps, that'll take you to the page where I've got my map resources. And the idea is, a lot of times we think about, just like all the others, oh, Google Maps, that's for finding directions. Well, sure it is. Absolutely. And I'm glad it's there. It helps me every day. But it's also a powerful tool for, again, our students to create, to analyze, to communicate. And so of the many mapping tools that are out there, one that I would definitely draw your attention to is Google Tour Builder. If people have not been playing around with that yet, I definitely want to let people get that on their radar. So Google Tour Builder basically allows students to build their own geographic tour by finding different locations on a map and then putting a pin there. And then on each of those locations, they can add images, they can add videos, they can add descriptions, links, and basically end up telling a story. Now, as an example of this, I'll just pull up one that I did. So if I go to Tour Builder and I go to my tours, I'm going to grab one here called Small as an Elephant. This is a young adult novel about a boy who gets lost and abandoned while hiking or camping in Maine and has to try to get home. And so he bikes and hikes and hitches rides and walks and tries to make it back home. And it's a really engaging story. And so what I did was I used Tour Builder to add all of these different locations. And for each location, I was then able to add in information about that location. So there's pictures, there's videos, you can add links in, you can make activities at each one if you want. Now, again, I did this myself, but students could easily do this. And so they can be telling a story. This could be something from history, or this could be visiting different biomes around the world, or this could be retelling the events of a story that you're reading. Could be an about me sort of thing. Could be lots of different possibilities. Now, what's great about this is once you're done building this tour, you can share it so that people can play through it. Where it really gets fun, though, instead of just playing through it here, which is cool. I mean, this lets you, play through and visit each of the locations. What's really fun is something new that has happened recently is that if you go up to the top menu bar in the top right, there's the option to open things from Tour Builder directly in Google Earth. And so if I click Open in Earth, it's going to fire up Google Earth, and it's going to load in that tour that I built. So I can now experience this in full 360 degrees. I can fly around and visit each of the locations. And Google Earth, again, if you haven't used it, you got to be using Google Earth on the web. It is such a powerful mapping tool that allows students to see any location on the entire planet and learn all about it. And so in this case, now we have that exact same tour, but now I can basically use my arrows over here to fly into each of the different locations in real live 3D. And now once I get to that location, if I just want to look at it here, that's fine, but I can always drag this around. I can switch into 3D mode and see this in full 3D and really see this is where that where the story took place. This is, what if you were, a student and you found yourself abandoned here? How would you get home? And it really puts you into it. And so Google mapping tools, those are just a couple. Oh my gosh, there are so many others. There's Google My Maps, and there's, so many other awesome things, Smarty Pins and landlines and all these really neat tools that are out there. The Google Maps time lapse, but just as some to get you started with, the Tour Builder is definitely a good entry point to start exploring the Google mapping tools.
Yeah, that's so cool. And kind of along what I was saying with the data with the sheets, I think this is a really good way to kind of like see things from the big picture, where if you take kind of like what you did with that story, you take and you pin all of these locations that were within the story, and then you see them on a map, and sometimes you can start to realize, oh my goodness, this one key thing that happened here was right around the block from where the story actually started. And you start to see things from kind of a different perspective in that way.
Absolutely.
So, love that. I think that's great. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up here, and I'm going to give Eric a chance to put his smiling face back on the screen so that he can say goodbye to all of you, since we've been looking at his screen this whole time. There,
yeah, absolutely. There I am.
Switch back over real quick. All right. So, Eric, I know that anybody that's watched this that uses G Suite in the classroom is loving this right now. And is there anything else that you'd like to point us to where if they want to get more, if they want more, I mean, obviously you've already shown us controlaltachieve.com/sheets/slides.
Sure.
You've got the 12 days of Techmas. Is there anything else that you want to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do try to share a lot of things online. And one of the first things you said in this particular session was how you get inspired by what other people post. I'm exactly the same. All throughout the month, I try to pay attention to Twitter and different blogs. I subscribe to, probably about a good 100 blogs in my RSS feeder. And anytime I come across something that catches my eye, I definitely retweet things. So, if you're looking for, a way to stay in the loop on things, you can certainly follow me at Eric Curts. But what I also do is I copy and paste things that I find into a couple of documents. So I've got 4 Google documents that I maintain, and they're basically technology integration resources for language arts, math, science, and social studies. Now, I need to branch out and throw in some arts and some other ones there, but I've got the core four right now. And every month I'm constantly building those documents. Now, those can also be found on the Control-Alt-Achieve site. If you go to the resources tab and go down below to the subject area, you'll find those different subjects and you'll find those. And that's just basically my way of trying to curate some of the most awesome resources people are sharing every month and trying to get those out to a broader group of people. So if, absolutely plug into the blog, watch the webinars, do all that, but I would hate for somebody to miss the fact that there's also these amazing documents that have been growing for the last year that I've been doing this. There's hundreds and hundreds of resources in each of those documents now, where I'm trying to highlight the awesome things that educators all over the world are doing and sharing.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That just sparked, and I never thought of curating things into a document like that and hanging on to them. So I've already just by watching your blog, this has been a nice deep dive into your blog. I've come up with lots of ideas from that too, in addition to the instructional ideas that we talked about today. I knew this was going to be a great session. It totally fit up to its billing. So Eric, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this. This is a fantastic resource for educators all around.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much.